Chapter 50:13. In fact, there was no need to take the jade slip. Xiaohua fell into the space, and the knowledge of Buddha Maitreya, the world venerable, and the others had already entered Xiaohua's heart. Xiaohua instantly knew all the cultivation methods and secret techniques. However, Xiaohua still took the jade slip, and his eyes flashed with 9 colors. After reading it, he sighed, "Our Tao sect's inheritance is really a bit messy. First, there was the Tao Venerable who taught us the nascent soul cultivation method, then there was the Tao Ancestor who taught us the primordial spirit cultivation method, and now there is the Tao Master who taught us the 9 transformation golden core cultivation method. The primordial spirit cultivation method seems to be borrowed from Confucianism, and the golden core cultivation method seems to be borrowed from Buddhism. It seems that they are not the real cultivation methods of our Tao sect. Perhaps only the Tao Venerable's nascent soul cultivation method is really passed down from ancient times." Unfortunately, when Xiaohua said this, his body suddenly shook as if he thought of something, and his face unexpectedly showed a shocked expression. Buddha Maitreya and the world venerable's face showed mercy, but he did not speak. After a long while, Xiaohua said in a low voice, "If I had not seen an angel before, I would have thought that the nascent soul cultivation method was unique to our Tao sect. But today I saw Zhang Jie. Isn't she completely composed of spiritual bodies? It's just that she is condensed from holy light, and our Tao sect's nascent soul is condensed from the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Could it be that our Tao sect doesn't have its own cultivation method?" "Not necessarily," Thunder Immortal shouted disdainfully. "Or maybe Buddhism, Confucianism, Sacred Light Realm, they all borrowed our Tao sect's cultivation method? But if so, why does our Tao sect have Tao Venerable, Tao Ancestor, and Tao Master, 3 ancestors?" Xiaohua asked. "The title of Tao Venerable is similar to the title of World Venerable, the title of Tao Master is similar to the title of Sacred Lord, and the incarnation of Tao Ancestor is the disappeared Confucian sage." "Ha, fellow Taoist." The celestial in the distance laughed heartlessly. "Aren't you thinking too much? This is a secret from ancient times. What does it have to do with us? So what if my Tao sect is a sect that was created using other sects as a reference? Could it be that only Confucians, Buddhas, and angels could exist in this world, and Taoists were not allowed to exist? Could it be that with the Heaven Alliance, Tao Alliance, and Profound Alliance in the Yilin mainland, my fortune gate is not allowed to appear and the Profound Alliance is not allowed to perish? Survival of the fittest, that's all there is to it." "Ha, fellow Taoist is right." Jade Archive Xiaohua laughed and looked around. "So what? Didn't our Tao sect suppress the Confucian cultivators, the Buddhist sect, and the demon race with the power of our sect? Forcing the immortal world to join hands and set up an immortal array to separate the Tao sect? Take a look at our cultivation. Is it inferior to that of the Confucian cultivators, Buddhists, demons, and even angels? When I walk on my own path, I don't care where it begins. When I walk on my own path, I only look at where it ends." "Sandalwood," Maitreya Buddha said with a smile, "you are a Taoist, but what are we? So you're still wrong. No matter if it's Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, demons, or even holy light, they are all laws. Isn't this the so-called origin of all laws? The laws of heaven and earth, the beginning of human relations, the origin of Tao, the beginning of faith." Jade Archive Xiaohua's body glowed with 9 colors, and various profound meanings bloomed like green lotuses. After an unknown period of time, Jade Archive Xiaohua suddenly opened his eyes and said with a smile, "There's movement in the quiet room. I'm afraid we've reached the Wuming Mountain range. Thunderbolt Immortal, I'll have to trouble you to go and pass the cultivation method of the 9 transformations golden pill and the 39 golden body to Wuxia. Our trip to the Yilin mainland can be considered complete." "I don't dare to go." Thunderbolt Immortal hurriedly waved his hand and said, "Just a single Tao seed is enough to make I want to die. It's better to let Heaven Man go." "Damn it, can't you see that I'm refining the origin of water?" Heaven Man glared at Thunderbolt Immortal. "I'm not coveting your Tao seed." "Namo Maitreya Buddha." Maitreya Buddha said with a bitter smile, Do you still want me to go? You go? If you go, you'll be slapped to death by the Taoist master. Heaven Man laughed. You exposed him, and you're the future Taoist master of the Buddhist sect. How can he let you live? Then let I go. As he spoke, Taoist Witch, who was usually quiet and had been in low spirits recently, appeared. Jade Archive Xiaohua knew that Taoist Witch was worried about the inheritance of the Wuming Mountain range. He nodded and said, Then I'll have to trouble you. No problem. Taoist Witch raised his hand and grabbed the jade scroll in Jade Archive Xiaohua's hand. In a flash, he disappeared. Fellow Taoist. Huang Tong and Feng Wu appeared just as Taoist Witch left. Huang Tong looked worriedly at the place where Taoist Witch disappeared and said, I'll go with Taoist Witch. Seeing that a soul cultivator and a demon were so close, Jade Archive Xiaohua nodded. Very good. Go and come back quickly. Seeing that Huang Tong had also left, Feng Wu said strangely, Fellow Taoist, you're too careless. We're about to enter the Wuming Mountain range. How could you let Taoist Witch leave? What about the Wuming Mountain range? We might need his help. Yang Xia's Mei Xianling is not too far away from the Wuming Mountain range. We'll be there in a short while using our spatial escape technique. Jade Archive Xiaohua smiled and said, Taoist Witch rarely takes the initiative to volunteer. How could I not allow it? Since the descendants of the Yi family can pass through the Wuming Mountain range, why can't we? Moreover, Taoist Witch had a witch body, which was something we couldn't compare to. Now that I have comprehended the laws of heaven and earth, my main body can also condense a witch body. Even without Taoist Witch, I can still enter the Wuming Mountain range. Then, Jade Archive Xiaohua raised his eyebrows and smiled. Bai Fei is calling for I outside the meditation room. I'll go out first. Fellow Taoist, let's go. The clones bowed and waited for Jade Archive Xiaohua to leave before continuing to cultivate. The clones and Jade Archive Xiaohua didn't seem to notice that outside the space where Xinhua continent was, faint ripples were slowly forming like bubbles in the sea. Jade Archive Xiaohua flew out of the space and turned back into his consciousness. He looked at a yellow talisman that was 3 fingers wide in front of him and flicked it lightly. Pa! The yellow talisman exploded, and Bai Fei's voice could be heard laughing. Jinren Xiao, you can come out now. Hee hee. Xiaohua smiled slightly, and the token in his hand emitted a faint light. The light rushed out, and the door of the meditation room quietly opened. He saw Bai Fei standing there with a smile on his face. He opened his mouth and said with a smile, Congratulations, Jinren Xiao. Congratulations, Jinren Xiao, ah? Xiaohua was stunned and asked curiously, Fellow Taoist Bai, where did the congratulations come from? Jinren Xiao has been in seclusion for many years. You must have been cultivating a secret technique. I knocked on the door several times, but there was no response. I think your cultivation must have improved greatly. Bai Fei said with a smile, Isn't this great news? Xiaohua naturally knew that Bai Fei didn't knock on the door at all. He also knew that the secret technique Bai Fei was talking about was the jade scroll Bai Fei gave him. He also knew that Bai Fei was reminding him not to forget that the technique he cultivated in seclusion was given by Bai Fei. Seeing Bai Fei so calculating, Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He looked around and said in a low voice, Fellow Taoist Bai, I can't compare to fellow Taoist talent. I have been in seclusion for many years, and I feel that my cultivation has improved. But if you check carefully, it seems like it's still in the same place. I can't understand it. Bai Fei smiled slightly, as if he had already expected Xiaohua to say this. He replied, Jinren Xiao, don't forget that this technique was given to me by the #1 person in the Yilin continent, Senior Zhang Xiaohua. How can ordinary cultivators understand the profoundness of this technique? I won't hide it from fellow Taoist. I really did have some gains in these few years. When we get to the Lost Land, how about I tell you everything? If Bai Fei didn't tamper with the Jade Scroll, Xiaohua would definitely be moved. But now, hearing this, other than disdain, there was only disdain in his heart. This kind of method of using a technique to threaten others, not to mention the current Xiaohua, even the low-level qi refining Xiaohua disdained to use it. This Xiaohua still pretended to hesitate. He touched his nose and said in a low voice, "This matter, how about we talk about it when we get to the Lost Land?" If so, Bai Fei frowned. Jinren Xiao, this Bai might as well say the ugly words. According to this Bai's understanding, the teleportation tunnel in the Wuming mountain range is very dangerous. This Bai has made a lot of preparations for this. If fellow Taoist doesn't express his attitude now, don't blame this Bai for not helping you if you encounter any danger in the teleportation tunnel. Xiaohua pondered for a moment. Then he raised his head and said, "Fellow Taoist Bai, if I can't even pass through the Wuming mountain range on my own, I presume that in the future, I won't have any important position by your side, right?" "Ha, so that's how it is." Bai Fei laughed and said, "This Bai understands. Let's go. Lord Special Envoy has already sent a message. Zhuang Chen and Beauty Yu have already gone there. This Bai wants to hear the truth from you, a choice. That's why I'm waiting here. Fellow Taoist Bai, please." Xiaohua smiled and asked Bai Fei to go first since he was going to put on an act. Bai Fei also went first. Xiaohua followed behind him and looked at Bai Fei's back. He was quite puzzled because Bright Moon Householder had clearly said that even the supreme experts of the Yi-Lin continent like them weren't sure that they could pass through the Wuming mountain range. This Bai Fei was only at the late stage of the nascent soul realm. So, how could he be sure that he could pass through? Could it be that he still had some tricks up his sleeve? Xiaohua was puzzled and Bai Fei was holding his head high. The two of them left the cabin. When they arrived on the deck, they couldn't help but be startled. When they had entered the special envoy's flying ship, they had heard the disciples of the Liu Immortal Union say that many of the cultivators who had gone to the Tranquil Wind ship had died because of the spatial storm in the Heavenly Wind Forbidden area. Only 30% of them had returned. In other words, less than 200 people had returned. But now, they saw that the deck was densely packed with nascent soul and gold core cultivators. There were at least several thousand of them. Xiaohua looked at Bai Fei in bewilderment. Bai Fei also shrugged his shoulders, indicating that he didn't know anything about this. You can. Chapter 50:14. On the deck, Beauty Yu and Zhuang Chen stood quietly in a corner. Seeing Xiaohua and Bai Fei come out, Zhuang Chen waved at them. "What's going on?" Bai Fei walked to Zhuang Chen and asked in a low voice. Zhuang Chen shook his head and replied, "I don't know." Beauty Yu said, "I came out early and have already asked the disciples of Liu Immortal Alliance. In order to go to the Lost Land, Liu Immortal Alliance sent 5 special envoys to find 5 groups of cultivators and led the branches to 5 places for selection. We are just one of them. Just before we arrived at Yuanzhong Mountain, the other 4 selected cultivators rushed to our flying boat. Moreover, I also heard that only our group of cultivators was unlucky. First, the number of people they found was small. During the selection, there was a collapse of the maze, so the number of people who passed was even smaller. The other 4 groups each had thousands of people who passed the selection." Bai Fei nodded and said, "If that's the case, then it's normal." Zhuang Chen was stunned and asked curiously, "Why?" Bai Fei looked at Zhuang Chen and said with a smile, "Liu Immortal Alliance went to the Heavenly Alliance to find cultivators with special magical powers to go to the Lost Land. If only 100 nascent soul cultivators like us went, then wouldn't that be the biggest joke in the world? If I were the leader of Liu Immortal Alliance, these thousands of people would not be enough. I would also find 100,000 nascent soul cultivators in the Immortal Alliance." Speaking of this, Bai Fei stopped again and thought for a moment. 100,000 nascent soul cultivators are a bit too many. Not to mention whether the transmission tunnel in the Wuming mountain range can withstand it, these 100,000 nascent soul cultivators will attract the attention of the soul cultivators in the Wuming mountain range. At most 50,000. Damn it. When he heard up to here, Xiaohua's expression changed slightly. It wasn't just that. The face of Bai Fei, who seemed to be in control, had turned ghastly pale as well. Others might not know what Bai Fei was thinking, but Xiaohua was extremely clear about it, and he couldn't help but curse in his heart. This failure Immortal Alliance truly deserves death. On the Dawn Rain continent, Foundation establishment cultivators are everywhere. There are very few golden core and nascent soul cultivators. The sect masters of the three major sects in the state of Shi are only late nascent soul cultivators. As for the Imperial Thunder Sect's sect master, Qian Lazy, although I have never seen him before, he is only a nascent soul cultivator. The Failure Valley Immortal Alliance sent 50,000 nascent soul cultivators at once. Even if only 1/10 of them survived, it would still be more than 1,000 nascent soul cultivators. 1,000 nascent soul cultivators would probably sweep through the entire Dawn Rain continent. It's no wonder that Bright Moon Householder said that Lien Feng was quite ambitious. Hee, fellow Taoist Bai, you're overthinking things. Zhuang Chen suddenly smiled and said, nascent soul stage cultivators may not be considered much in the Yilan continent, but they are still mid-level cultivators. How could the Immortal Alliance allow so many nascent soul stage cultivators to enter the Wuming Mountain range? In my opinion, 20,000 nascent soul stage cultivators and 30,000 gold core stage cultivators should be enough. As he spoke, several more nascent soul stage cultivators walked out of the cabin. The nascent soul stage cultivator at the front had a huge body and wasn't wearing an ordinary Taoist robe. Instead, he wore a short robe with his thick arms and legs exposed. Even his chest was exposed, revealing a patch of thick black chest hair. Looking at the face of this cultivator, it was just as ferocious. There was a finger-wide scar on the left side of his face, revealing red flesh and blood. Coupled with the ominous glint flashing in his eyes, if an ordinary person were to see him at night, they would probably faint from fright. When this cultivator walked onto the deck, his face was filled with disdain. Then, he looked around and his gaze immediately fell on Beauty Yu's curvaceous body. With greed and lust in his eyes, the cultivator licked his lips with his scarlet tongue and stroked the black hair in front of his chest. Then he swaggered over. Bai Fei was originally speaking in a low voice, but when he heard the footsteps, he couldn't help but turn around. When he saw the cultivator's appearance, his expression changed greatly and he cursed in a low voice, "Damn it! Why is he here?" Xiao Huan naturally also saw this ferocious nascent soul stage cultivator and asked curiously, "Who is he? Is there a problem?" However, Bai Fei didn't answer Xiao Hua. Instead, he took a few steps forward to increase the distance between him and Beauty Yu. Just as Bai Fei stood still, the nascent soul stage cultivator and the 4 people behind him had already arrived. The 5 of them surrounded Xiao Hua and the others. The nascent soul stage cultivator in the front opened his mouth and cupped his hands towards Beauty Yu. "This old man is in Yushan, Ancestor Jade Fat. How should I address this fellow Taoist?" Beauty Yu glanced at Ancestor Jade Fat and didn't answer. Instead, she turned to look at the center of the deck. There, Du Peng was talking to the 4 spirit severing stage cultivators in a low voice. The 5 of them had a faint smile on their faces. "Damn it!" An early nascent soul stage cultivator next to Ancestor Jade Fat cursed, "Didn't you hear my ancestor ask you something?" Shoo! Seeing that Beauty Yu ignored Ancestor Jade Fat, Bai Fei couldn't help but look into the distance and said in a low voice, "Fellow Taoist, could it be that you think your words are more important than the special envoy? We are preparing to listen to the special envoy's teachings. How would we have the time to greet you?" Hee. Ancestor Jade Fat reluctantly shifted his gaze away from Beauty Yu and looked at Bai Fei. His gaze even swept past Xiao Hua and Zhuang Chen. The expression in his eyes was not without threat. Then he looked at Bai Fei again and laughed. "Your words, are you threatening this old man?" Bai Fei shrugged and shook his head. "Fellow Taoist, this is the special envoy's flying ship. Even if I had 10 times the courage, I wouldn't dare to threaten fellow Taoist. I'm just reminding fellow Taoist. This old man has ears. Do I need you to worry about me?" Ancestor Jade Fat sneered. The other 4 nascent soul stage cultivators slightly staggered and tacitly blocked Xiao Hua and the others, separating them one by one. Ooh! At this moment, a violent wind suddenly blew in the distant sky. A black cloud was born from the horizon. However, that black cloud was already close in a moment. Everyone could see clearly that it was actually a huge black eagle. That black eagle's wings were several hundred feet long, as if it wanted to cover the entire sky. On the back of the black shadow, a bald cultivator stood barefoot. The sunlight shone on his body, causing layers of golden light to flicker. The pressure of a middle body integration stage cultivator was released without any restraint. He was truly like a diamond. The black eagle spread its wings and crossed thousands of miles in a flash. Although the pressure that was like the falling of the heavenly river didn't come close, everyone on the special envoy's flying ship couldn't help but tremble at the same time. Disciples. Du Peng and the other 4 spirit-severing stage cultivators didn't dare to be negligent. They shouted, "Quickly prepare to welcome Vice Alliance leader Xiong." Then, the 5 of them rushed into the sky to welcome him. When the nascent soul stage cultivator named Ancestor Jade Fat saw this, she didn't dare to be nosy. She fiercely glared at Bai Fei and the others, then lifted her leg and walked to another place. There, several nascent soul stage cultivators took advantage of Du Peng and the others flying high and hurriedly waved at Ancestor Jade Fat and the others. Damn it. Bai Fei saw those nascent soul stage cultivators waving and cursed in a low voice. Xiao Hua slightly frowned and asked in a low voice, "Fellow Taoist Bai, do you know those nascent soul stage cultivators?" This Bai is a cultivator of the Illusion Immortal Alliance. I don't know much about the cultivators of the Failure Valley Immortal Alliance. Bai Fei's gaze fell on those nascent soul stage cultivators who were whispering and glancing over. His face revealed a trace of vigilance and disgust as he replied, "But this Bai has heard a little about these notorious nascent soul stage cultivators." Notorious? Xiao Hua was stunned, and a bad feeling arose in his heart. Notorious? Bai Fei didn't hide the disgust in his mouth and replied, "That Ancestor Jade Fat just now is a cultivator who is proficient in the shady business of gathering yin to nourish yang. He came from the Heong sect and had already raped and killed a Foundation establishment female disciple when he was a gold core stage cultivator. However, because he was the direct bloodline of an elder of the Heong sect, not only did he not take his life, he even went into seclusion to reflect on his mistakes and advance his cultivation. Then, he was again *************. Xiao Hua felt a wave of disgust for no reason. He waved his hand and said, "There's no need to talk about this person. What about those few?" "Those few?" Bai Fei sneered and said, "Those few are each more powerful than the other. Look at that late nascent soul stage cultivator with a red face. He's called Ancestor Heart Devourer and specializes in eating people's hearts, especially the hearts of beautiful female cultivators. That one with a face as white as jade is called Jade-Faced Scholar. His name sounds very refined, but he loves torture the most. Any cultivator who offends him, regardless of gender, will be skinned. In private, everyone calls him Skin-Flaying Scholar. Look at that one." Bai Fei seemed to have done his homework very well. Not only did he point out those few notorious nascent soul stage cultivators of the Defeat Oak Immortal Alliance, he also pointed out the evil deeds of the Illusion Immortal Alliance's nascent soul stage cultivators further away. Hearing this, Xiao Hua's forehead was covered in sweat. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! At this moment, Xiao Hua finally understood that other than wanting to occupy the Dawn Rain Continent, Lian Feng also wanted to use the Dawn Rain Continent to deal with these notorious nascent soul stage cultivators. It was the same attitude as the Heaven Alliance towards Lian Feng. "It's fine as long as you don't commit evil within my Heaven Alliance. As for how you commit evil in the Dawn Rain Continent, it'll depend on whether you have the ability to pass through the Wuming Mountain Range." How many nascent soul stage cultivators could Bai Fei know? He could see the savagery of these nascent soul stage cultivators. Then what about the other nascent soul stage cultivators that Bai Fei didn't know? Alas, there's no need to think too much. Xiao Hua sighed and inwardly pondered. Other than this Xiao and Bai Fei who sincerely want to return to the Dawn Rain Continent, among the several tens of thousands of cultivators on Envoy Man's flying ship, who else sincerely wants to go to the Dawn Rain Continent? And which cultivator with a normal mind, after obtaining a cultivation technique, would still want to go to the lost place and risk their lives? Those who want to go to the lost place are definitely not people with a pure mind. Their goals are all unspeakable. Their arrival at the Dawn Rain continent is definitely not a blessing for the Dawn Rain continent. It can only be a disaster for the Dawn Rain continent. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, cast a monthly vote, cast a recommendation vote, collect a collection, reward, and thank all forms of support. Chapter 50-15. Xiaohua was furious. He looked up at the sky and saw that the Black Eagle had already landed. Du Peng and the other spirit-severing cultivators bowed. Vice Alliance leader Xiong casually stepped down from the Black Eagle. Xiaohua looked at the mid-body integration stage cultivator who had been possessed by the demon race and coldly thought, as for the disciples sent by the Defeat Immortal Alliance to the Lost Land, there's Vice Alliance leader Xiong who was possessed by the demon race and a spirit-severing envoy who was possessed by the demon race. Can they still be normal human cultivators? Previously, Xiaohua felt a bit of regret. He felt that he shouldn't have wasted so much time in the Wuming Mountain range, but now he didn't regret it at all. If he hadn't endured until now, how could he have known about the Defeat Immortal Alliance's plan? How could he have known that the identities of the nascent soul cultivators heading to the Dawn Rain continent were so complicated? Even if the chances of these fiends passing through the Wuming Mountain range were very small, once they reached the Dawn Rain continent, they would be a disaster. Xiaohua absolutely couldn't allow this to happen. While Xiaohua was thinking, Bai Fei narrowed his eyes and didn't say a word. He seemed to be thinking about something. Xiaohua retracted his gaze and glanced at the gloomy Bai Fei. He nodded to himself. He knew that Bai Fei was extremely astute and would fuss over anything. If it was something that was disadvantageous to him, he would definitely not do it. If it was something that was beneficial to him, he would rack his brains and do it even if he had to sharpen his head. He had many shortcomings, but Bai Fei's attitude was still quite clear. Based on this alone, Xiaohua wouldn't make things difficult for Bai Fei. After a few more breaths, Vice Alliance leader Xiong landed with big strides. Du Peng and the others carefully followed behind. Although Vice Alliance leader Xiong had already retracted his combined pressure, his undisguised arrogance still suppressed the gazes of all the cultivators on the Special Envoy's flying ship. Vice Alliance leader Xiong looked around and frowned. Why are there so few people? Vice Alliance leader Xiong's tone was clearly unfriendly. Du Peng and the other spirit-severing cultivators' faces tightened and they all looked at Du Peng. Du Peng helplessly flew a few steps and bowed. Reporting to Vice Alliance leader, Disciple was ordered by Alliance leader to lead a group of nascent soul cultivators to the Heavenly Wind Forbidden Lands maze formation. Unfortunately, we encountered the Heavenly Wind Forbidden Lands Heavenly Wind. Shut up. Before Du Peng could finish speaking, Vice Alliance Master Xiong's expression changed, and he roared, "Why are you telling me so many reasons?" Could it be that he wanted to push the blame to the Alliance Master? Are you trying to push the blame to the Heavenly Wind Forbidden Land? Du Peng hurriedly knelt down, his body trembling as he said, "Disciple doesn't dare, Disciple doesn't dare." Vice Alliance leader Xiong raised his leg and kicked Du Peng's shoulder. With a cracking sound, Du Peng's shoulder caved in. Du Peng's body was tumbling in the air. He let out some miserable shrieks, but it was obvious that he was trying his best to endure it. Heading to the Lost Land to find a cultivation path for the disciples of my Liu Immortal Alliance was personally planned by the Alliance Master. Vice Alliance Master Xiong continued to speak loudly. My Liu Immortal Alliance spent hundreds of years and a lot of manpower on this matter. Now, you actually messed it up. Tell me, how should I punish you? Vice Alliance leader Xiong was so ruthless that he wanted to punish the Special Envoy without saying a single word to the cultivators on the Special Envoy's flying ship. For a moment, all the cultivators felt as if they were walking on thin ice. No one dared to breathe. Vice Alliance leader Xiong. The other 4 Special Envoys who were distracted didn't dare to be negligent. They hurriedly knelt down and kowtowed. Although Du Peng lost too many cultivators in the selection this time, he worked hard for this matter. We all saw it with our own eyes. As the saying goes, if there is no merit, there is hard work. I hope Vice Alliance leader Xiong can be magnanimous and give him a chance to repent. Vice Alliance leader Xiong snorted coldly and didn't say anything else. He seemed to be thinking about how to deal with Du Peng. The entire special envoy's flying ship was silent. Even the mountain wind was so scared that it didn't dare to blow. Only a corner of the flying ship was seen clearly by Xiaohua. He sneered in his heart. He already knew the reason why the two demons were putting on a show. Vice Alliance leader Xiong thought for a moment and said, "My Liu Immortal Alliance has always been fair in rewards and punishments. Since you all worked for my Liu Immortal Alliance, the Alliance Master has seen it all. Since that's the case, I won't kill this guy on the spot. I'll let him make up for his mistakes." Many thanks, Vice Alliance leader Xiong. The four spirit severing stage envoys hurriedly kowtowed to express their gratitude. Du Peng also endured the pain and kowtowed. Du Peng, Vice Alliance leader Xiong said again. This time, my Liu Immortal Alliance sent out 5 envoys. The other 4 envoys each sent over 1,000 cultivators. Only you sent over 100 cultivators. It can be seen that you didn't put much effort into this matter. You should immediately send a letter to the Alliance Master and request for your subordinates to fill this gap. You should personally lead all the cultivators to the Lost Land. Ah! Du Peng's face was originally filled with joy. However, when he heard this, his face turned pale and he said in a panic, "Vice Alliance leader Xiong, what?" Vice Alliance leader Xiong's face revealed a sinister smile. "Could it be that you want me to kill you on the spot?" With that, Vice Alliance leader Xiong released his aura and enveloped Du Peng. The other 4 spirit severing stage cultivators hurriedly said, "Vice Alliance leader Xiong, the Wuming Mountain range is too dangerous." All the cultivators above the nascent soul stage seem to have not passed through it. If Du Peng goes over, shut up. Vice Alliance leader Xiong scolded. Everyone knows that the Wuming Mountain range is dangerous. However, look at the thousands of cultivators below you. What are they doing standing here? They are risking their lives to pass through the Wuming Mountain range that you speak of. If they can go, why can't Du Peng go? Why can't his subordinates go? Could it be that they are the only ones who are brave and the Defeat You Immortal Alliance can only be cowards? The 4 spirit severing stage cultivators were speechless. If you go to the Wuming Mountain range, you still have a chance of survival. If you don't go, you will only die. Vice Alliance leader Xiong looked at Du Peng and said coldly, "You choose for yourself." With that, Vice Alliance leader Xiong ignored Du Peng and looked at the special envoy's flying ship. His gaze swept across everyone as if he was looking at them. Everyone unconsciously shrank their necks as if they were extremely afraid. The Vice Alliance leader Xiong suddenly said in a thunderous voice, "You are the brave warriors of the Defeat You Immortal Alliance. Since young, you have shouldered the heavy responsibility of the tens of millions of disciples of the Defeat You Immortal Alliance. Now, you have also shouldered the heavy responsibility of the Heaven Alliance. Now that the spiritual energy of heaven and earth has changed greatly." Vice Alliance leader Xiong's voice echoed between heaven and earth. The nascent soul cultivators on the special envoy's flying ship all looked awe-inspiring, as if they had really become the brave warriors who saved the world. As for Du Peng, he nodded at the 4 spirit severing stage cultivators somewhat sadly. His figure quietly flew down from the flying ship and hurriedly entered the cabin. The other special envoys looked at each other and looked at each other. They knew that Du Peng and Vice Alliance leader Xiong were not on good terms, but they definitely did not expect that Vice Alliance leader Xiong would hit him when he was down at this time. If you make a mistake, you will be punished. Not to mention the special envoys of the Defeat You Immortal Alliance. If I make a mistake, the Alliance leader will also punish me. But if you've rendered meritorious service, then you must be rewarded. Everyone, don't worry. Once all of you step foot into the lost grounds, not only will all of you have opened a new chapter in your cultivation, you'll even obtain generous rewards from my Defeat Immortal Alliance. I am a little envious of all of you. If I had not merged with my body, I would have gone to the Wuming Mountain range to try my luck. Ha! Hearing this, some of the spirit severing stage cultivators could not help but laugh, as if they felt that this boorish man was not what they thought in their hearts. Then, Vice Alliance leader Xiong said a few more words of encouragement and turned to ask the other 4 spirit severing stage cultivators, "Is everything ready?" A slightly taller cultivator hurriedly replied, "Everything is ready. Only Vice Alliance leader Xiong can come over. We are going to give out the number plates and prepare to leave. Leave number 1 to Du Peng." Vice Alliance leader Xiong glanced at the flying ship below him and ordered. "Yes, disciple understands." Hearing this, the cultivator nodded and asked in a low voice, "However, disciple does not know how many disciples Du Peng will bring to the Lost Land. How many people are there now?" Vice Alliance leader Xiong frowned and asked. "There are nearly 5,000 spirit severing stage cultivators selected. Including those prepared by the Immortal Alliance, there should be 30,000 people." The cultivator did not dare to delay and hurriedly replied. 50,000. Vice Alliance leader Xiong waved his hand and said, "Let Du Peng gather 50,000 cultivators." 50,000. The cultivator was slightly taken aback. Clearly, this number was beyond his expectations. He hurriedly said in a low voice, "Vice Alliance leader Xiong, 50,000 spirit severing stage cultivators has already surpassed us. Damn it, did I say 50,000 spirit severing stage cultivators?" Vice Alliance leader Xiong glared at him, scaring the cultivator into quickly nodding and saying, "Yes, yes, disciple understands." While speaking, Du Peng flew out of the flying ship. The injury on his shoulder did not change at all. He bowed and said, reporting to Vice Alliance leader Xiong, "Disciple has already written a letter to Lord Alliance leader. Lord Alliance leader has agreed to disciple's compensation." Vice Alliance leader Xiong nodded and ignored Du Peng. The cultivator beside him hurriedly told him about Vice Alliance leader Xiong's orders. Du Peng was stunned on the spot. After a while, he gritted his teeth and said, "Disciple understands. Thank you Vice Alliance leader Xiong for thinking so highly of disciple. It's good that you understand." Vice Alliance leader Xiong grinned and said, "I'll wait for the day you make up for your mistakes." Then, Vice Alliance leader Xiong rubbed his chin and said, "That's right, I'm afraid your 20,000 disciples are not on the flying ship, so you won't be able to give out tokens today. I'm not going to wait for this bullshit ceremony." The tall cultivator hurriedly replied, "Disciple is here." Vice Alliance leader Xiong raised his hand and said, "Give me token number 1. The cultivator named Jianghu did not dare to delay. He hurriedly took out a palm-sized token from his storage ring. On it was the number 1. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, and give it a tip. Chapter 5016. Vice Alliance leader Xiong took the token and looked down at the flying ship. He raised his voice and said, "Everyone, I still have other important matters to attend to in the Immortal Alliance. I can't wait here for too long. Therefore, I can't watch all of you bring the token to the Wuming Mountain Range. Today, I will give this token to Du Peng. I hope he can atone for his mistakes and bring all of you to the Lost Land." As he spoke, Vice Alliance leader Xiong handed the token to Du Peng. Du Peng hurriedly bowed and received it. He replied, "I will not disappoint Alliance leader." Unfortunately, before Du Peng could finish speaking, Vice Alliance leader Xiong laughed loudly. The black eagle sitting cross-legged in the distance let out a long cry and flapped its wings. Vice Alliance leader Xiong's figure flashed and landed on the black eagle's back in the blink of an eye. His voice was like a thunderclap as he said, "I'm leaving. You can wait for me. Farewell, Vice Alliance leader Xiong." Everyone, including Du Peng, hurriedly bowed. After the Black Hawk left, the 4 spirit severing stage cultivators looked at each other and then sympathetically looked at Du Peng. The 4 of them wanted to say something, but when the words came to their mouths, they didn't know where to start. After all, the 4 envoys all had backgrounds. If they said something wrong, it would make Du Peng suspicious. Du Peng smiled and cupped his hands. "Thank you for your pleas. If it wasn't for you, I am afraid I wouldn't even have this chance." Sigh. Jianghu looked at the token in Du Peng's hand and sighed. We thought that fellow Taoist Du's selection would be too few and Vice Alliance leader Xiong would reprimand us. After all, fellow Taoist Yuani has already reported this to Alliance leader, but, as he spoke, Jin too glanced at another spirit-severing stage cultivator. That spirit-severing stage cultivator was obviously very close to Vice Alliance leader Xiong. Seeing Jin Tu looking at him, he hurriedly waved his hand and said, "Jin Tu, don't look at me. I admit that I have a good relationship with Vice Alliance leader Xiong, but I also have a good relationship with Du Peng." "Ah." Du Peng laughed and said, "This matter has nothing to do with you. I'm afraid it's something else." At this point, Du Peng seemed to want to say something but hesitated. Instead, he changed the topic and said, "This Du has already submitted a letter of apology to the Alliance Master. Today, the Alliance Master is very happy to see this Du redeem himself. He has already revealed to this Du that as long as this Du can return from the lost place alive, this Du will have other benefits." Jin Tu and the other soul formation cultivators revealed looks of envy. Jin Tu smiled and said, "Fellow Taoist Du is indeed a lucky person. It's rare that you could survive such a dangerous situation. However, fellow Taoist, you should still be careful. The Wuming Mountain Range is not an easy place to deal with." That's right. Brother Du, you should think about how to pass through the Wuming Mountain Range." The rest of the people nodded in agreement. "Let's go. Today is a happy start for us. We're going to finish the task that Lord Alliance Master gave us. However, I didn't expect that because of this Du's matter, everyone would be delayed for a few days. This Du has already ordered the disciples to prepare a banquet. This Du will apologize to everyone during the banquet." Du Peng looked at everyone and squeezed out a smile on his face. At this moment, the wound on his shoulder hurt so much that his face couldn't help but twist. Seeing this, Jin Tu and the others said with concern, "Fellow Taoist Du, you should take some pills and meditate first. When Vice Alliance Master Xiong makes a move, how can it be simple?" Du Peng took out a jade bottle. As he swallowed the pills, he said, "Today, no one can leave. You must drink with this Du. Perhaps after today, this Du won't be able to see you again. Okay, we'll drink until we're drunk." Jin Tu and the others naturally understood the meaning of Du Peng's words. They looked at each other. Although they didn't feel the same way, they definitely felt the same way. Not to mention Du Peng and the others drinking and saying goodbye, Xiao Hua and the others had occupied the deck for half a day. After watching the farce, they returned to the meditation room. Seeing Ancestor Yu Ji looking over, Bai Fei hurriedly urged Xiao Hua, Zhuang Chen, and Beauty Yu to return. Even when Bai Fei activated the token to open and close the meditation room, he could hear the sound of clothes rustling behind him. It was obvious that Ancestor Yu Ji and the others had chased over. Damn it! Bai Fei stood in the meditation room. His expression was calm as he cursed in his heart. He himself wasn't sure whether this sentence was cursing Ancestor Yu Ji for courting death or cursing Beauty Yu for being with him and finding trouble for him. "Fellow Taoist Bai." Beauty Yu's voice was a bit hoarse. She said, "This is my private matter. If you find it troublesome, then let me handle it myself. I won't bring any trouble to everyone." Bai Fei knew that when he saw Ancestor Yu Ji just now, he couldn't help but move a few steps away, which made Beauty Yu unhappy. He smiled and said, "Fairy is thinking too much." Previously, this Bai had a trace of fear in his heart and felt that he wanted to stay away from this matter. This Bai doesn't deny that this Bai is a bit afraid of this Ancestor Yu Ji. After all, this person's vicious reputation is too great. However, since this Bai and the other fellow Taoists have already discussed and agreed to join hands at this time, can this Bai still take half a step back? Good. Xiao Hua clapped and said, "Fellow Taoist Bai's words, I like to hear them. However, I still don't understand. We are all on the special envoy's flying ship right now. Doesn't that Ancestor Yu Ji know to avoid some taboos? Why does she still have to be so brazen? Just based on fellow Taoist Xiao's words, this Bai must become friends with fellow Taoist Xiao." Bai Fei smiled and said, "Because fellow Taoist Xiao has never done evil before." Sweat. Xiao Hua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He said, "Didn't you say something about Ancestor Yu Ji?" Why did fellow Taoist by mention I again? Do you know why Ancestor Yu Ji and the others don't avoid taboos? Bai Fei said coldly, because they are originally lawless people, because they are originally deranged people, because they are originally extremely vicious people. In their eyes, there are only things they want to do. There are originally no rules, no fear. They are not the same as us and are not bound by Special Envoy Du's restrictions. Even in front of Special Envoy Du, they will restrain themselves for a moment. However, as long as they leave Special Envoy Du's line of sight, they will definitely do it again. They are also the outlaws of the secular world. Xiao Hua indifferently replied. And that's right, outlaws. They don't care about their own lives, and also don't care about the lives of others. Bai Fei nodded and said, These people can only be killed. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and said, But who dares to kill them? Bai Fei sneered and said, They have illustrious family backgrounds, powerful seniors, and they themselves have cultivation that the majority of cultivators don't have. Even if it is Special Envoy Du, do you think that at this time he will make a move to kill Ancestor Yu Ji? Probably not. Zhuang Chen hesitated and replied in a low voice. So, Bai Fei nodded and said, We have to save ourselves. How do we save ourselves? Xiao Hua asked with interest. Their cultivation is higher than ours, and they have more people than us. This is the most troublesome part. Bai Fei frowned and thought for a long time before discussing with Xiao Hua and the others. Xiao Hua listened for a few words, and it was nothing more than a scheme to lead a wolf into the house, so he lost interest. At this time, there was movement in his space. Taoist Witch and Huang Tong had quietly returned. So Xiao Hua responded without a word, and his mind entered the space. After turning into Jade Archive Xiao Hua, he bowed to Taoist Witch and Huang Tong and asked, Two fellow cultivators, this trip is considered smooth? Ha! Huang Tong laughed and said, Yang Xia has seen our strength in the Tianfeng Forbidden Land. How would he dare to have any other ideas? When he saw that we had the 9 transformation golden pill and the jade slip of 3 mysteries, he was overjoyed and thanked us endlessly. That's strange. Jade Archive Xiao Hua pinched his chin and frowned. According to the previous 2 times, the Dao Master and the Dao Master acted, the Dao Master should have appeared by now. But why haven't we seen the Dao Master? Fellow cultivator, you think too much? Taoist Wu said angrily. Previously, Taoist friend failed to modify the nascent soul and essence soul cultivation methods. That was why Dao Ancestor and Dao Master appeared to bestow you the Dao Seed. Now that you have modified the 9 Revolutions Golden Core cultivation method, why did Dao Master appear? Jade Archive Xiao Hua laughed. So it's not good for us to do too much. I don't think so. Huang Tong shook her head and said, I think that either the Dao Master will appear before we enter the Wuming Mountain range, or he will never appear. What do you mean? Jade Archive Xiao Hua asked with interest. It's very simple. Huang Tong explained, the Yilin continent was abandoned by the Xian Alliance, so the choice of the Xian Alliance is naturally the choice of the Dao Master. Why would the Dao Master appear in the Yilin continent without the Dao Master's orthodoxy? Yes, you're right. Jade Archive Xiao Hua nodded and said, I think so too. We have never seen any traces of the Dao Master and the Dao Master in the Xiaoyu continent, the hidden Immortal continent, the Western Paradise and the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm. We can only see the 2 ancestors in the Yilin continent where the Dao sect thrives, because the Heaven Alliance and the Dao Alliance are here. Perhaps when the Xian Alliance develops again in the future, the Dao Master will take care of the Yilin continent. We've already done it, who cares if he comes or not? Taoist Witch said angrily again, if the Dao Master doesn't come, fellow cultivator won't modify the cultivation method? Also, do you think the Dao Alliance and the Heaven Alliance will let the Xian Alliance rebuild so easily? Seeing that Taoist Witch was in a bad mood, Jade Archive Xiao Hua didn't say much and nodded. Fellow cultivator, you're right. Of course, the Dao Alliance and the Heaven Alliance said it well, but who knows what they will do in the future. The 2 Immortal Alliances can't even work together, let alone the Xian Alliance that has already declined. Our goal is to modify the cultivation method, not to get any rewards. If the Dao Master really comes now, we'll be in a difficult situation. New Dao Seed. I don't know which fellow cultivator will be able to obtain it. It's better if he doesn't come. Of course. Huang Tong smiled and said, we didn't make this trip in vain. P.S. Fellow cultivators who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give it as a reward. Chapter 50:17. While speaking, Huang Tong took out 3 things from his arms and handed them to Xiao Hua. These are the things that Xian Alliance left behind in the Yilin continent when they went to the 10,000 demon realm. Yang Xia entrusted I to bring them to you. Sweat. Jade Archive Xiao Hua did not even look at the 3 things and smiled bitterly. Fellow Huang Tong, even fellow Wu saw through Yang Xia's plan. Why do you still want to accept these 3 things? Needless to say, these 3 things must be very important to the Xian Alliance. The leader of the Xian Alliance did not dare to bring them into the 10,000 demon realm, so he left them in the Yilin continent. Yang Xia asked me to accept these things because he wanted to hand over the matter of rebuilding the Xian Alliance to us. Huang Tong shrugged and smiled. Of course I know. But the problem is, we don't have the time and opportunity to rebuild the Xian Alliance for him. He didn't say it clearly. Looking at this shameless old fox, Jade Archive Xiao Hua was also helpless. He raised his hand and grabbed, then let I see what these things are. The 3 things fell into Jade Archive Xiao Hua's hands, and Jade Archive Xiao Hua's body shook. The first thing he saw was a broken array diagram. As soon as this array diagram fell into Jade Archive Xiao Hua's hands, a murderous aura rushed towards him. Layers of stormy waves of sword chi rotated crazily in this array diagram, condensing into a fierce sword array that wanted to get out of the sword diagram. And as soon as the murderous aura touched Jade Archive Xiao Hua's hands, king, there was an earth-shattering sound of a sword. Jade Archive Xiao Hua's body could not help but turn into a sword. A sharp aura that could pierce heaven and earth was born from Jade Archive Xiao Hua's body, tearing the surrounding space apart. Damn it. Huang Tong was also stunned. Why didn't I have such power when I was holding this thing? Because you are not strong enough to control this immortal trapping sword diagram. Jade Archive Xiao Hua's voice was like the sound of a sword, resounding in the sky. The sound of the sword was so ear-piercing that even the broken Immortal Executioner stage trembled slightly, as if it was afraid of the sword intent of the Immortal Trapping Sword diagram. No way. Taoist Wu was also dumbfounded. He looked at the Immortal Slaying platform and then at the sword diagram that had transformed into a clear sword light. Within the sword light, there was a faintly discernible ferocious sword. Although it had yet to reveal its sword form, the incomparable coldness within the sword light made Taoist Wu's heart shrink. He couldn't help but exclaim, "Is Yang Xia stupid? He actually gave such a supreme sword diagram to you?" It's simple. Jade Archive Xiao Hua's sword-like figure slowly shrank and descended as he replied faintly, "Firstly, he doesn't know that this is the Immortal Trapping Sword diagram. Secondly, even if he knew, the laws of heaven and earth of the Yilin continent would have restricted this Immortal Trapping Sword diagram. Without immortal spiritual sword chi, I'm afraid that he wouldn't even be able to see through this sword diagram. Thirdly, this is not the complete sword diagram. This sword diagram in the Xian Alliance of the Yilin continent is only a representation, a symbol." Jade Archive Xiao Hua transformed into his human form and raised his hand to point at the clear sword chi. Clang! A surge of sword chi flew out from the sword chi and completely cut off Jade Archive Xiao Hua's hand. In this space, the sword diagram still had such power. This was even more out of Huang Tong and the rest's expectations. Jade Archive Xiao Hua wasn't surprised. He raised his hand again and grabbed. Rumble! Countless space-profound laws were born around the sword chi and rolled towards the sword chi. The sword chi once again transformed into countless sword lights, wanting to kill the profound laws. However, as Jade Archive Xiao Hua closed his hand, all the sword lights disappeared and the broken sword diagram appeared in front of everyone again. This is an item from the immortal realm. Huang Tong's gaze was like lightning. She had already seen the supreme sword form standing proudly in the sword diagram. It wasn't something that could be created by the laws of heaven and earth of the Yi-Lin continent. She couldn't help but remind him in a low voice. Jade Archive Xiao Hua nodded. So I am considering how to deal with this sword diagram. Since it's called the Immortal Trapping Sword Diagram, then there should be some immortal trapping sword, right? Taoist Wu asked. Jade Archive Xiaohua shook his head and said, I don't know about this. I only know that this is the Immortal Trapping Sword Diagram from the Sword Diagram. It's a part of a big array diagram. There's an even bigger sword diagram? Huang Tong was a little dumbfounded. Then what kind of power would it have? Slaying immortals. Jade Archive Xiaohua replied indifferently, slaying immortals. As for what immortals it is, it depends on who is controlling the sword diagram. Hearing this, Huang Tong's eyes lit up and said, then what are you still thinking about? Of course, you have to take it to the immortal realm. An ordinary man's wealth is his own ruin. Jade Archive Xiaohua sighed. He waved his hand and imprisoned the Immortal Trapping Sword Diagram. His gaze landed on the second item. The second item was a broken stone tablet. There were a few strokes engraved on the stone tablet, which seemed to be a part of a word. However, from these strokes, even Xiaohua, who was in the Jade Archive, couldn't tell what the word was. As for the stone tablet, it seemed to have an indescribable suction force that attracted Jade Archive Xiaohua's gaze. However, when Jade Archive Xiaohua's gaze fell on it, he could only see a misty brilliance. It was a piece of heaven and earth. However, Jade Archive Xiaohua couldn't tell what was inside. Either there was nothing inside the stone tablet, or the stone tablet had a restriction that surpassed Jade Archive Xiaohua's strength. Jade Archive Xiaohua couldn't see it. However, Jade Archive Xiaohua faintly smelled an indescribable aura from the stone tablet. This aura seemed to be a great opportunity, but also a great danger. What's the origin of this thing? Huang Tong saw that Jade Archive Xiaohua didn't speak and couldn't help but ask. Jade Archive Xiaohua shook his head slightly. I can't tell. What? Even you can't tell? Huang Tong was surprised again. In this world, there's something that you can't control? Yes. Jade Archive Xiaohua nodded. This stone tablet and the sword diagram just now are not from the Yi-Lin continent. They should be the Xian Alliance's treasures. Xian Alliance has such good things. What about the Dao Alliance and the Heaven Alliance? It had to be said that Huang Tong sometimes overthought things. I don't even know how to deal with these two troublesome things. Why do you care about other people's treasures? Jade Archive Xiaohua said unhappily. Huang Tong snorted coldly. Once you enter the Xiao sect, you are as deep as the ocean. From now on, Xian Alliance is just a passerby. In your hands, how can you let others take advantage of it? Even if I can't use it, I will carve the word, Xiao, and place it here. After speaking, Huang Tong looked at the third item and asked, what about this? This? Jade Archive Xiaohua looked at the last fist-sized golden core in his hand. This golden core was engraved with a mysterious heavenly pattern and earth deed. Under the illumination of the spiritual light in the space, this heavenly pattern and earth deed gave off a beautiful luster. A cultivator seemed to be sitting cross-legged in this luster. Thus, Xiaohua smiled and said, this is a Xian Alliance cultivator's golden core 8 transformations. If you have the Xian Alliance's secret technique, it can allow a golden core 9 transformations cultivator to cultivate to the equivalent of a golden core 8 transformations cultivator. Now that the Xian Alliance has lost this secret technique, this golden core, I'm afraid it's Yang Xia's test. However, I don't know this secret technique. I'll have to disappoint Yang Xia. As he spoke, Jade Archive Xiaohua imprisoned the broken stone tablet and gold core, placing them together with the Immortal Trapping Sword Diagram. Turning his head to look outside the space, he smiled and said, Bai Fei and the rest should have finished their discussion. This poor Taoist will go out with them to kill Ancestor Yu Ji. How embarrassing! You still want to kill a nascent soul kid? Huang Tong waved his hand and said, if anyone asks, don't say that this old man knows you. Jade Archive Xiaohua smiled and left the space. His mind returned to its original position. Unfortunately, Bai Fei and the others were still thinking too much. 3 days later, Bai Fei and the others received the token from the Defeat You Immortal Alliance's disciple. When they saw their own numbers, they couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Taoist Master Xiao. Bai Fei saw that his own token had 2,373 written on it and couldn't help but be startled. He hurriedly looked at Xiao Hua and asked, "What's written on your token?" Xiao Hua raised the token and said with a frown, "I's token is 2,373 too." Hiss. Bai Fei sucked in a breath of cold air and said in surprise, "I understand." Xiao Hua had already understood when he received the token. At this moment he pretended to be puzzled and looked at Beauty Yu, asking, "Fairy, what's written on your token?" "I'm 8,666. After Beauty Yu finished speaking, Zhuang Chen beside her smiled bitterly and said, "I'm 7664. Damn it, we discussed for 3 days for nothing." Bai Fei cursed in a low voice and said, "I neglected this matter. Since Li Yu Immortal Alliance has 5 special envoys for 5 rounds of selection, how could they all be looking for the Wind Underworld Wheel? The other 4 groups of cultivators are naturally looking for other types of soul tools. Our Wind Underworld Wheel and those soul tools should have a better effect when used together. Therefore, it's impossible for us to be grouped together." But there are only about 40 people who got the Wind Underworld Wheel. Zhuang Chen was still puzzled and asked, "How many cultivators can they team up with?" Xiao Hua looked at this devil who was pretending to be stupid and said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist, have you forgotten? The maze formation in the Heavenly Wind Forbidden Land was discovered by the special envoys. If Li Yu Immortal Alliance wants to send disciples there, why would they let their disciples participate in the selection? When we return to the special envoy's flying ship, the special envoys can order some disciples to take the Wind Underworld Wheel away." When Bai Fei heard this, his expression changed slightly. He seemed to have neglected this matter and said in a low voice, But that maze formation has already collapsed. Nascent soul cultivators like us naturally can't enter." Xiao Hua said with a smile, "Could it be that spirit-severing cultivators can't enter too? What about void refinement cultivators? Could it be that Li Yu Immortal Alliance only has nascent soul cultivators?" Sigh. Bai Fei sighed and looked at the cultivators on the flying ship who had already received their tokens and were checking their tokens. Du Peng and the other 4 spirit-severing cultivators were wearing tight robes and were standing in the air talking about something. Bai Fei couldn't help but secretly worry about whether his scheme would work or not. At this moment, the disciples of Li Yu Immortal Alliance who were also wearing tight robes flew out from the deck. These disciples were holding tokens in their hands and the numbers on the tokens were emitting a kind of hazy luster that could be seen clearly from far away. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a month, vote for a recommendation, collect, reward, and thank all forms of support. Chapter 50:18. After waiting for these disciples to stand in different places outside the flying boat, a voice once again sounded from high up in the sky. "Everyone, this time, there are a total of 50,000 nascent soul and gold core cultivators heading towards the Lost Land. In order to safely pass through the Wuming Mountain Range, we will be divided into 5,000 groups of 10. In other words, from 1 to 10 will be a group, and from 11 to 20 will be a group. In each group, 1 and 11 will be the head of the group. The rest of the groups will be so. Everyone, quickly find your own group and find the head of the group to register." Since Xiao Hua's number plate was 27833, he was naturally in the 2783rd group. He looked all around, and with some difficulty he found the disciple of the defeated Immortal Union who held the 27,831 command plate. It was not that this disciple was hard to find, but because following the voice's command, several thousand cultivators flew up at the same time. The entire scene was quite chaotic, and Xiao Hua's line of sight was blocked. Xiao Hua found it difficult to find his own group, let alone the other cultivators. Several thousand cultivators were like several thousand blindly flying flies, and only after a long while did they gradually become orderly. Xiao Hua had just flown to the front of his own group when he saw a nascent soul cultivator holding a command plate flying over at a moderate pace. When that nascent soul cultivator saw Xiaohua, he immediately laughed and said, "Ha, so it's you. If she was here, it would be wonderful." Xiaohua's gaze indifferently swept over, and the corner of his mouth revealed a trace of a sneer. Wasn't this nascent soul cultivator the Jade Fat Ancestor from before? At this moment, the command plate in Jade Fat Ancestor's hand was quite eye-catching. Your Jade Fat Ancestor? Behind Xiaohua, a slightly surprised voice sounded. Another nascent soul cultivator slowly flew over, one step slower than Jade Fat Ancestor. "Damn it, Poison Stone Master, why am I in the same group as you?" Jade Fat Ancestor looked at the command plate in this nascent soul cultivator's hand and unconsciously spat, cursing, "I'm really unlucky. I'm the unlucky one." Poison Stone Master cursed, "I'm actually in the same group as you, this thing that's neither male nor female." "Ha, which thing that's neither male nor female? Tell me your name, I like it." Before Poison Stone could finish speaking, another sharp voice rang out. A beautiful female cultivator with long black hair flew over. Her clothes were red and green, making her look particularly gorgeous. Cough cough. When Jade Fat Ancestor saw this person, she immediately coughed twice. She actually had a disgusted look on her face. However, she didn't dare to show her disgust too clearly. Instead, she looked left and right and said in a low voice, "Poison Stone Guru, who was speaking just now?" "Of course it's me." The female cultivator who had just called herself lousy changed her tune and said in a sweet voice, "What? You actually didn't hurry over to greet me when you saw me coming?" Shiqing. Old Ancestor Yuji flew into a rage and shouted, "Which family's great aunt are you? You better explain clearly. Otherwise, even if this daddy doesn't have to go to the Lost Lands, I'll still explain clearly to you." Ioyo. The nascent soul cultivator named Shiqing curled her lips and said, "Your ancestor even watched the moon with me on the mountain peak. If you don't call me lousy great aunt, then what should you call me?" Cough cough. While everyone was talking, a cultivator with a body as tall as an iron tower flew over. He coughed twice and swept his gaze across everyone. He said in a simple voice, "Are you all in the same group as me? Huang Chu Fan? Huang Dorgad?" Not to mention Ancestor Yu Ji being greatly shocked, even the last nascent soul cultivator named Shiqing was greatly shocked. In disbelief, he cried out, "Why did you also come? Since you all are here, why can't this daddy come?" Huang Chu Fan, who was called Door God, smiled coldly. As he spoke, he flew to the disciple holding the number 27831 and asked, "Am I in the same group as you?" That disciple looked at the number 27,833 in Huang Chufan's hand and said with a smile, "That's right, Senior Huang. You are in the same group as this junior. Junior's name is Xue Chong. Greetings, Senior." Xiaohua stood to the side and watched. When he heard the nascent soul middle stage cultivator named Xue Chong call Huang Chufan, who was also a nascent soul middle stage cultivator, Senior, he couldn't help but be surprised. In his heart, he said, "Looks like this Huang Door God has some background." Xiaohua's thoughts were correct. This Huang Chufan naturally had some background. With him standing there, Jade Fat Ancestor, Venomous Master, and Shiqing didn't dare to say anything. Damn it. Back in the sky, Du Peng saw the chaos and cursed, "This Du has been busy dispatching disciples these past few days and forgot about these cultivators. Such a mess. I'm afraid that before they even left the Changchang Plains, they would have been discovered by soul cultivators, right?" "Brother Du doesn't need to worry," Jean Tu said with a smile, "there are only a few cultivators. When your tens of thousands of disciples come, just bring these cultivators away." Du Peng's eyes flashed with coldness. He said coldly, "Most of these nascent soul cultivators are arrogant and unruly. This Du has a portion of Jindan cultivators among this Du's disciples. I'm afraid they won't be able to suppress them." "Then kill the chicken to scare the monkey," another spirit-severing cultivator suggested without hesitation. While they were speaking, thousands of disciples were already in position. They all stood orderly in the sky, quietly waiting for orders. "Listen to my orders." Du Peng's figure flew out from the group of four. he waved his hand and said, "Disciples, return to your positions." Yes. Not far from the special envoy's flying ship, there was another flying ship of similar size. Following Du Peng's order, there was a chorus of agreement. Groups of nascent soul and Jindan cultivators flew out and supplemented the group of 5,000 that Xiaohua and the others were in. Among them, 4 cultivators wearing blue robes flew to Shuicheng. The 4 of them cupped their hands toward Xiaohua and the others. The nascent soul cultivator at the front first said, "I am sect Qi Feng. Greetings, fellow Taoists." The other 3 were Jindan cultivators. The 3 of them bowed and said, "Juniors Hui Jin, Dian Hongji, and Su Pei greet seniors." Shuicheng didn't say much. Instead, he looked towards Huang Chufan. Huang Chufan nodded and said, Since Huang Chufan was like this, Ancestor Yu Ji, Venomous Stone, and Shi Qing were even more indifferent. They swept their gazes and didn't speak. Xiaohua sighed and waved his hand, saying, "Rise?" His tone wasn't without loneliness. Because Xiaohua already saw that these 4 cultivators, along with Shuicheng, who was the first to stand in front, were all cultivators that had been possessed by the devil race. There wasn't a single normal human. It was to the extent that the defeated Immortal Alliance near Xiaohua were also cultivators possessed by the devil race. The entire area near the special envoy's flying ship was really a group of devils dancing in disorder. Different from Xiaohua's loneliness, Bai Fei was somewhat anxious. His situation was similar to Xiaohua's. After finding 2, 3, 7, and 1 nascent soul cultivators, he couldn't help but sweep his gaze around. Even when several groups of nascent soul cultivators came over, he didn't have the mind to say more than a few words. He was far from his previous shrewdness. "Master?" Xiaoya seemed to have sensed something and hurriedly transmitted her voice. "Be careful, these nascent soul cultivators have ill intentions towards you. It seems like one of them is familiar with Ancestor Yu Ji." Bai Fei composed himself and didn't look at those nascent soul cultivators. He sneered in his heart, "These damn things, even if I can't pass through Wuming Mountain Range, I'll take them down with me. I absolutely can't let them reach Dawn Rain Continent." While Bai Fei was speaking, a nascent soul cultivator flew over with 4 gold core cultivators. Bai Fei's eyes lit up. Wasn't the last gold core cultivator he was looking forward to Yi Yun? Bai Fei opened his mouth and was about to call out when Yi Yun hurriedly shook her head slightly, hinting Bai Fei not to recognize her. When Bai Fei saw Yi Yun's expression, his heart was completely at ease. He faintly smiled to show that he understood. Then, he leisurely looked around as if he was calculating something. The nascent soul cultivator who brought Yi Yun and the others over wore a purple gold crown and looked very strange. He flew to Bai Fei's side and looked at the group leader. He cupped his hands and said, "Senior Marshal Brother Lu, disciple Hu Yi has come under the special envoy's orders to bring 4 disciples here to await your orders. Disciple Zhang Qing, Yu Yanli, He Zhua, and Yi Yun greets the seniors." The 4 gold core disciples didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly bowed to the group of nascent soul cultivators. Without waiting for Senior Marshal Brother Lu to speak, a nascent soul cultivator at the side licked his lips and laughed softly. "I didn't expect to be in the same group as the female cultivators. This old man's luck is really good." Senior Brother Lu frowned. Just as he was about to speak, a commotion broke out not far away. A tall monk with more than 10 skulls around his neck shouted, "What capabilities do you have to be the leader of my group? How can the 10 of us pass through Wuming Mountain Range with you leading us? Hurry up and hand over the token." "Senior." A cultivator with a soft but determined voice replied, "This junior is under the special envoy's orders to lead the seniors through Wuming Mountain Range. Although this junior's strength is not as strong as yours, this junior has trained with all of you for several years before coming to Changchang Plains. As the group leader, this junior doesn't have any authority. Instead, this junior is responsible for coordinating the actions of the 5,000 groups with all of you. Instead, this junior is under the orders of the special envoy. This junior is far superior to this junior in this aspect." "Who said so?" The monk shouted. "This senior can command 10 people with this token." "This senior said so." Du Peng had already looked around and was waiting for someone to come forward to show his authority. He also understood that there would definitely be someone among these cultivators who would come out. As soon as Du Peng saw the monk open his mouth, he immediately flew over and said coldly, "What's wrong? You're not convinced? Vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, and give it a tip." Chapter 5019. Lord's Special Envoy. That disciple didn't expect that his words would really provoke Du Peng. Although he was arrogant and unruly, he wasn't a fool. He hurriedly smiled and said, "Junior was just joking with this disciple. How could Du Peng allow him to say more?" Wu. He raised his hand, and his palm immediately expanded to several hundred feet in size. Then he grabbed at the monk. The monk panicked and shouted, "Senior Du, this is a misunderstanding." At the same time, he moved his body in an attempt to escape. However, seeing that the space around him was sealed and he couldn't teleport, even if he was a nascent soul cultivator, the monk gritted his teeth and shouted, "Du Peng, you actually..." Unfortunately, before the monk could finish speaking, Du Peng forcefully activated his dermic powers. The giant hand tore through the void and grabbed the monk's body. Du Peng's voice was like a thunderclap as he said, "Since you took the command token of my Defeat Immortal Alliance, then you have to listen to the orders of the disciples of my Defeat Immortal Alliance. If anyone dares to refuse, then they'll suffer the same fate as this kid." Boom. Along with Du Peng's voice, a brilliant light flashed above the hand. With a muffled sound, the monk's body was crushed into a pulp. Chirp chirp. A fat nascent soul was forcibly squeezed out from the gap of the large hand, its face full of panic. Pooh! A green light flashed from Du Peng's nose. Before anyone could see what kind of magic treasure was inside the green light, the nascent soul's head had already been pierced through. The nascent soul's small eyes closed and it collapsed in Du Peng's hand. Du Pengyu looked around and his gaze landed on a nascent soul cultivator. He smiled. "Is that Patriarch Shirshin?" Yes, I am." Shivering with fear, old ancestor Shur-Exen hurriedly bowed and replied, "I heard you have a banner for refining nascent souls?" Du Peng asked with a smile. Forefather Shur-Exen turned pale with fright and hurriedly dropped to his knees. "This junior knows his mistake. This junior knows his mistake? Humph, useless thing." Du Peng shook his hand and threw the nascent soul to Patriarch Shirshin. Then he scolded, "What are you afraid of? It's a bargain for you." Ah? Patriarch Heart Devouring was stunned. After a while, he said ecstatically, "Thank you, Senior. Thank you." As he spoke, he quickly opened his mouth and a black flag covered in blood light flew out. The moment the flag opened, countless miserable screams came from within. When the flag opened, the monk's nascent soul was sucked into it. Then, Patriarch Shur-Exen opened his mouth and the flag flew into his mouth once more. Du Peng threw his nascent soul away and flew into the sky. His eyes were like lightning as he released his pressure. After looking around, he raised his token and said, "Although I'm a spirit-severing cultivator, I'll still take token number 1 and go with you to the Wu Meng mountain range. Your group leaders are this old man's doppelganger. They can hear this old man's orders, and their actions can also be reported back to this old man through the token. Whoever dares to disobey my orders and try to play tricks in the teleportation tunnel. If they don't want me to reach the Lost Land alive, I'll make sure they die before I do." "Yes, we understand. We'll follow Lord Envoy's orders." The group of nascent soul cultivators trembled in fear, while the disciples of Liu Immortal Alliance answered loudly. Xiao Hua saw this farce and his face was as calm as water. Similar to Xiao Hua, Bai Fei also stayed out of the matter. When he saw Du Peng raise his hand to grab the big monk, everyone looked up at the sky. His figure moved slightly and floated to Yi Yun's side. He raised his hand and handed a storage ring to Yun from his Taoist robe. Yi Yun was shocked. She didn't know why Bai Fei did this, but her expression changed slightly. She didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly took the storage ring. Her trembling and sweaty little hand even touched Bai Fei's finger. Bai Fei handed over the storage ring and looked up at the sky with the same expression. Du Peng killed the monk's nascent soul. Bai Fei transmitted his voice. This is the medicinal pill I've found for you all these years. I was in a hurry that day and didn't have time to give it to you. Now that we're about to enter the Wuming mountain range, I'm afraid you'll be in danger in the teleportation tunnel because your injuries haven't healed yet. So I'm taking the risk to give it to you. Quickly find a time to take it. Yi Yun was a little angry at Bai Fei for taking such a risk, but when she heard that he was asking for medicinal pills for her injuries and even took the risk to give it to her, she felt sweet in her heart. She smiled sweetly at Bai Fei and nodded slightly, indicating that she understood. Hee. Xiao Yu's voice sounded in Bai Fei's ears again. Master, your bewitchment technique has reached the point of perfection. This medicinal pill contains the Void Cloud pill, right? Bai Fei frowned, showing a displeased expression. Master, don't worry. Xiao Yu seemed to have noticed Bai Fei's displeasure and hurriedly explained. What I mean is that Master hasn't refined the Void Cloud pill to perfection yet. If you give it to this little girl now, I'm afraid she won't be able to force out all of her absolute evil dark yin. It won't be as effective for Master's cultivation as expected. You talk too much. Bai Fei scolded in his heart and didn't say anything else. Bai Fei naturally knew that the Void Cloud pill wasn't refined to perfection, but the Wuming mountain range was full of dangers. He and Yi Yun could die at any time, so he wanted to seize any opportunity to improve his strength. After Du Peng showed his power, he didn't say anything else. He raised his hand and pointed to the east, where the sky was still gray and gloomy under the bright sun, and said, Everyone make a blood oath. The disciples of the Defeat You Immortal Alliance who held the number 1 token answered in unison. They opened their mouths and spat out thousands of drops of blood essence. As the disciples cast spells, blood scars like blood shadows appeared in midair. Ooh! As these blood scars appeared, the heaven and earth vaguely emitted ghostly wails and wolf howls. Wisps of indescribable dark green mixed with black threads rushed out of the void and shrouded the space of nearly 1,000 miles. For a moment, even the scorching sun in the sky gave birth to a chilling cold. Soul technique? Demon blood shadow? Xiao Hua frowned and suddenly understood something. This wasn't out of his expectations. After all, the Defeat You Immortal Alliance was close to the Wuming mountain range. Moreover, if the Alliance Master of the Defeat You Immortal Alliance coveted the Dawn Rain continent and wanted to pass through the Wuming mountain range, he would definitely cultivate his disciples to cultivate soul techniques. But what Xiaohua didn't expect was that these demons who possessed the bodies of humans could also use soul techniques. Moreover, they mixed their soul techniques with the demon blood shadows. Several thousand blood shadows flew out and rushed into the sky. Du Peng's figure followed and rushed into the sky. He looked at the other 4 doppelganger envoys and said with a smile, Everyone, it's time to ask the Alliance Master's blood talisman. Okay. When the 4 doppelganger envoys heard this, they didn't dare to be negligent. They also flew into the sky and stood in a pentagon with Du Peng. Then each of them raised their hands and took out a fist-sized, blood-colored object from their bosoms. These objects were like amber, and their edges were sparkling and translucent. Inside each of them was a bloody scar the length of a finger. These bloody scars were extremely thick, and there were tens of thousands of fine lines. They looked like a blood-red eye that was looking at the thousands of bloody scars in the sky. Damn it! Xiao Hua cursed in a low voice when he saw the power of the blood vessels in the blood-colored object. I'm afraid this Lian Feng isn't an ordinary nascent soul cultivator. He's a soul warrior or even a shaman. Maybe he wasn't kept in the dark. Instead, he colluded with the demon race. The demon race's target is the Dawn Rain continent while his target is the Wuming mountain range. Xiao Hua came to a realization. Together with Du Peng, the other 5 doppelganger envoys urged their blood essence and chanted different incantations from their mouths. As the incantations fell into the blood essence, the 5 blood essences turned into 5 different blood spheres. These blood spheres seemed to be boiling and surging. In the end, they condensed into different shapes. Some were triangular, some were square. Go! Du Peng and the others' complexions seemed to be somewhat pale. In the end, they pointed at the blood sphere and lifted it as if it was heavy. With a shout, the blood sphere fell into the blood talisman. Boom! As soon as the blood talisman came into contact with the blood sphere, it immediately shattered and turned into a baleful aura that soared into the sky. A valiant power of the blood vessels swept away nearly 5,000 bloody streaks in the sky like a big hand. Woof! Like the sound of green seal scripts, the baleful aura gave birth to all kinds of strange illusions. White bones, blood rivers, the netherworld, flowers, and so on flashed high in the sky like light and shadow. When all these strange phenomena disappeared, a talisman full of blood-colored seal scripts engraved with green seal scripts slowly floated down from the sky. Every time this talisman floated down an inch, a blood-colored mark would rush into the void and disappear. Du Peng then took out a bone case from his bosom. He didn't dare to fly high and only respectfully flew down to the blood talisman. When the blood talisman quietly fell into the bone case, he closed the bone case. His expression relaxed and he put the bone case away into his bosom. He bowed to the other 4 doppelganger envoys and said, "Thank you for your trouble." "We're nothing." Jianghu and the others faintly smiled. "We don't dare to take credit for working for the Alliance head. On the contrary, Brother Du has to work hard for this trip. Hee, please help me pass on a message to the Alliance head." Du Peng looked at the Wuming mountain range in the distance and said word by word, "Succeed or die trying." But Jianghu and the others cupped their fists and said, "We'll definitely pass on your message to the Alliance head. Please." Du Peng's face seemed to be filled with emotion as he raised his hand and said, "Brother Du, please." Jianghu and the others said with a solemn face, "We'll send Brother Du off." But Du Peng nodded and took out the number 1 token. He opened his mouth and said, "Everyone." Instantly, the 4,999 tokens produced the same voice at the same time. At this time, the disciples of the defeated Immortal Alliance didn't speak in unison. Instead, they spoke in the same way as they usually did. These voices also came from the tokens in Du Peng's hand. "Let's go." With Du Peng's order, 10 groups flew out. The other cultivators of the 10 groups didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly followed in an orderly manner. They flew towards the east at a low altitude. Not waiting for these 100 people to fly more than 300 meters away, another 100 people flew out. Xiaohua's group was the 7th group to fly out. Xiaohua, like the other cultivators, placed the command medallion in front of his chest. From the command medallion, he heard the disciple named Shuaichong call out in a low voice, "Seniors, we're setting off. Please follow this poor Taoist to fly this way. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a month, vote for a recommendation, collect, reward, and thank you for all forms of support." Chapter 50-20. When Xiaohua heard this, he didn't hesitate in the slightest and flew along with Shuaichong towards the northeast for nearly 3 kilometers. Then, he followed the other cultivators and flew towards the east in a formation. When all the nascent soul and golden core cultivators had left, Du Peng took a deep breath and bowed to Jianghu and the others again. "Farewell. I wish Brother Du success." Jianghu and the others did not say much and bowed to see him off. When Du Peng turned into a light shadow and flew in front of all the cultivators, Jianghu and the others looked at each other and shook their heads slightly. They knew that Du Peng's trip boded ill rather than well, and it would be extremely difficult for him to return. "Let's go, everyone." Jianghu looked at the special envoy's flying boat and said, "Today's matter is over. The next time Alliance Master wants to think about the lost place, I'm afraid it will be 1,000 years later. 1,000 years later." Another Funshan cultivator looked up at the scorching sun and whispered, "By then, I'm afraid I'll have turned into a skeleton." As he spoke, he turned to look at Du Peng's back and said, "Du Peng's trip this time may seem like a one-way trip, but who knows if it's a blessing in disguise. Sometimes, I have the urge to rush into the Wuming mountain range to see what's in the lost place and whether I can find a way to stop the loss of my lifespan. It's useless to think so much." Jianghu shook his head. "We've just activated our blood essence and sped up the loss of our lifespan. Now, let's take the flying boat back. Don't use any spells. Then, everyone said a few more words and landed on a flying boat together. The low-level disciples drove the boat and flew into the distance. Not long after, the world returned to peace. No one knew that 50,000 cultivators were valiantly heading towards the Wumeng mountain range and pointing their swords at the Dawn Rain continent. 50,000 cultivators seemed to be a lot, but in the Changchang Plains, it was nothing. Not to mention, this was a place for soul cultivators. All the mountains, trees, rocks, and rivers were slightly different from other places in the Yilin continent. Just like the 10,000 demons realm and the 1,000 demons sacred realm, everything was much bigger. A group of 50,000 cultivators flying low in the sky was really inconspicuous. Taoist Wu and Huang Tong had already been to the Changchang Plains and did not find any special traces. Therefore, Xiaohua did not pay much attention to it. He followed the other cultivators and flew at a low altitude. He observed the scenery along the way and waited to see what Du Peng and the others were up to. Since Wuming mountain range was one with millions of Meng mountains, this Changli plain was also the border of soul cultivators. It was similar to the Bai and Stockade where Xiaohua, Li Zongbao, and the others went on a journey. The climate there was extremely hot, and there were many mountain ranges. On top of that, there were many rocks, not to mention green grass. Most of them were scratching the ground. Sticking close to the ground, there were things that looked like thorns. These things had some thorns, but they also had some green leaves. There were even some fruits that were smaller than gravel among the green leaves. Furthermore, there weren't any large trees on the mountain range. Occasionally, there would be some slightly tall trees. They were no taller than 1 foot, but the trunks were extremely thick. There were also many branches on the trunks. However, these branches and tendrils were somewhat dry, and they were faintly dyed with a yellowish color. Seeing so many scenes that were similar to millions of Meng mountains, Xiaohua suddenly realized something. He hurriedly shouted in his heart, "Fellow cultivators, because of the change in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, millions of Meng mountains was barren. How many natives starved to death? How could I forget about this when I arrived at Wuming mountain range today?" Lightning Immortal smiled bitterly. "Fellow cultivator, we were not idle. When we broke into the realm from the 10,000 demon realm, we were already unconscious and you lost all your magic power. Then, you were schemed against by the devil race and fell directly into the heaven sacrificial abyss. You benefited from the disaster and obtained the Tao seed. Then we began to wake up. After that, we rushed to recover, but we had no time to save the world." Fellow cultivator Lightning is right. Taoist Wu also said, "I didn't have much free time. Although it took me several years to come here from the Tianfeng Forbidden Land, I spent most of these years absorbing the origin of water. Even when I arrived at Wuming mountain range that day, I paid more attention to finding the teleportation tunnel to the Dawn Rain continent." At this point, Taoist Wu stopped and reminded, "Fellow cultivator, there is a swamp in front of us. There are powerful soul beasts in it." As soon as Taoist Wu finished speaking, Shui Chang's voice came from Xiaohua's token, "Seniors, slow down. We are about to turn north in the next 10 miles. Huh. Xiaohua laughed. It seems that the Defeat Yak Immortal Alliance has already figured out the situation around Wuming mountain range. From here to the heaven and earth confinement that you saw earlier, it's about 1,000,000 miles away, right? With the Defeat Yak Immortal Alliance's speed and method, it will take more than a year. Too slow." Lightning Immortal muttered, "Fellow cultivator, why don't we snatch that blood talisman and search its soul directly to see what means the Defeat Yak Immortal Alliance has? We will go there ourselves. There are not many good people among these cultivators heading to the Dawn Rain continent." "Yes, there aren't many good people." Xiaohua nodded and looked around. It's nothing to kill these 50,000 cultivators, but the soul search might not succeed. Why don't we directly find the Defeat Yak Immortal Alliance's Alliance Master Lian Feng? At this point, Xiaohua frowned and didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at Ancestor Yu Ji, who wasn't too far away from him. This reckless thing was actually discussing with Venomous Stone on how to kill him in the teleportation tunnel. Of course, it would be best to kill him in front of Beauty Yu to achieve the effect of killing the chicken to scare the monkey and make Beauty Yu submit. "Kill." Xiao Hua was instantly filled with killing intent. He wanted to follow Lightning Immortal's idea and kill these several tens of thousands of nascent soul cultivators who were possessed by the devil race. He wanted to search Du Peng's soul directly. But just as this thought appeared, a pure and holy luster suddenly appeared in the distant horizon. This luster streaked across the sky and blocked the path of the several tens of thousands of Defeat Yak Immortal Alliance disciples. Zhang Jie. Xiao Hua was stunned and inwardly said in surprise, why did she come here? Could it be that she discovered the abnormality of Du Peng and the others and wants to kill these devils? However, contrary to Xiao Hua's expectations, Zhang Jie didn't use any sacred light realm technique to look at the several tens of thousands of humans. Instead, he stood on a distant mountain peak and frowned as he looked at the distant Wuming mountain range. On the other hand, Du Peng, who was flying neither too fast nor too slow, had a tense expression as he hurriedly ordered the 50,000 cultivators to stop. He hurriedly flew in front of Zhang Jie and respectfully saluted, "Greetings, senior." Zhang Jie glanced at Du Peng with a face full of disgust and said, "No need to call me senior. I can't be considered your senior." Du Peng didn't dare to offend Zhang Jie and hurriedly said, But Junior really doesn't know what to call me other than this title." Zhang Jie originally wanted him to call him by his real name, but when she thought about how her name came from the mouth of a devil, she impatiently waved her hand and said, "Whatever. What took you so long?" "Senior." Du Peng hurriedly smiled and said, "Going to the lost place isn't an easy task. Think about it, even with your strength, you can't find a way to pass through this heaven and earth restriction. How can we, the cultivators of the human world, pass through so easily? If we don't fully prepare, going to the Wuming mountain range is suicide. We've been preparing for almost 600 years. Zhang Jie sneered and said, "Could it be that you're plotting something again?" "Senior, please spare my life." Du Peng wanted to kowtow, but when he thought of the 50,000 cultivators behind him, he suppressed the fear in his heart and hurriedly begged, "Junior is just a small fly in front of Senior. I definitely wouldn't dare to have any thoughts. Moreover, Junior knows that it's impossible for Junior to pass through the Wuming mountain range. I still have to rely on Senior's help. Think about it, Junior wouldn't have any plans. However, the way to the lost place is still in the hands of Alliance Master Lien Feng. If he doesn't want to, nobody can do anything to him." Back then, the Alliance Master of the Heavenly Alliance issued an order for Lien Feng to hand over the way to pass through the Wuming mountain range to the Heavenly Alliance, but he refused. In the end, the Alliance Master of the Heavenly Alliance had no choice but to ignore this matter. Therefore, what Junior can do is to make this trip as soon as possible. As for the details, it's still up to Alliance Master Lien Feng. "You have so many disciples, how long will it take to get there?" Zhang Jie looked around and said, "How about I take you with me?" Just as he said this, Zhang Jie immediately noticed Xiao Hua in the crowd. Although Xiao Hua had concealed his cultivation and even his appearance was different from before, Zhang Jie, an angel of the Holy Light Realm, could still see through him at a glance. "Zhang Jie." Xiao Hua hurriedly transmitted his voice to him, "I'm also going to the lost place. We have the same goal, so don't talk too much." You can actually hear me?" Zhang Jie's holy face was filled with surprise, and he asked again, "Are you still a cultivator of the mortal realm?" "That's all for later, I'll talk about it later." Xiao Hua was not afraid of Zhang Jie, who was suppressed by the laws of heaven and earth in the Yilin continent, and said softly, "Since you can't find the transmission channel to the lost place, why don't we follow this demon and see what tricks their Alliance Master Lien Feng has?" But Zhang Jie nodded slightly and looked at Du Peng. At this moment, Du Peng hurriedly waved his hand and said, "Senior, please don't use any magical powers." Since Zhang Jie had listened to Xiao Hua's words, of course he would not use any magical powers, but he asked softly, "Why?" "Firstly, there are many soul beasts of the sorcerer god in the Wuming mountain range. Who knows if there are any particularly powerful ones?" Du Peng explained, "If we attract them, it will be disadvantageous to this trip. Of course, this is not the most important thing. The most important thing is, during this period of time in the Wuming mountain range, I will be training 50,000 cultivators. Although most of these cultivators are disciples of the younger generation, they have never been here personally. Not only do they not know the dangers of this place, but they also do not cooperate well with each other. Only after they have gone through this period of training can they cooperate well with each other, and only then can we safely pass through the transmission channel in the Wuming Mountain Range. P.S. Fellow cultivators who like this book, please subscribe to it at Chidian, vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, donate it, and Chapter 5021. All right. Zhang Jie nodded helplessly and was about to fly away again. Senior. Du Peng hurriedly called out. Don't worry. If you leave, I won't be able to contact you. If there were any abnormalities, wouldn't it affect our plans? Zhang Jie hesitated. She looked at the humans in the distance with undisguised disgust. As an angel of the Holy Light Realm, she didn't even look down on humans in the mortal realm. How could she tolerate these humans who had been possessed by demons? She said coldly, although we have a cooperation agreement, I have my own bottom line. If you want to reach the Lost Land alive, don't create any more trouble. After saying that, Zhang Jie turned around and turned into a white light, shooting into the sky and disappearing in a moment. Damn it! Du Peng gritted his teeth and only dared to curse in his heart. He then turned to look at the demons and nascent soul cultivators who were frightened by the holy aura of the Holy Light Realm in Zhang Jie's body and smiled. Everyone, did you see that? We're not the only ones who want to go to the Lost Land. There are many seniors and experts. And they can't pass through the Wuming Mountain Range alone. They still have to rely on us to defeat the Immortal Alliance. So don't worry. With such help, we'll have a better chance of passing through the Wuming Mountain Range and entering the Lost Land. Then, under Du Peng's command, the 50,000 cultivators followed the plan in an orderly manner, avoiding the powerful soul beasts and continuing to move forward. As for Xiaohua, he thought to himself, damn it, an angel as strong as Zhang Jie also tried to find a way to pass through the Wuming Mountain Range, but she couldn't pass through it. Instead, she chose to cooperate with Du Peng, who was possessed by a demon. Why should I act rashly? Why don't I just follow behind them and see what different methods they have? Furthermore, the time spent in the Wuming Mountain Range is also very precious. Instead of killing all the demons and rushing to the Wuming Mountain Range, why don't we use this time to distribute the good seeds and millet seeds to the Yilin continent and the Wuming Mountain Range and save more people? This Zhang Jie is interesting. The Thunderbolt Immortal laughed. When she met us that day, she was hesitant and didn't say anything. I thought she had some secrets. So it turns out that she's working with the demons and is afraid that we'll find out. For the Holy Light Realm to be able to stand on equal footing with the Buddhist kingdom, they naturally have their own strengths. Maitreya Buddha World Honored One also said, this angel is similar to my Buddha nation's Arhat. She's not good at lying. Whatever she says should be true. Hee, there's no need to care about others. Xiaohua said with a smile, everyone, I will be feigning civility here, I cannot leave as I please. The important task of distributing rice seeds and millet seeds will be handed over to everyone. It's all right. Huang Tong laughed heartily. Now that we have reached the grand completion stage, we can travel across the Yilin mainland in a flash. Fellow Taoist, you only need to ask the Fortune Gate disciples to prepare the seeds. Between saving people and killing demons, Xiaohua easily chose to save people. In the following days, Xiaohua coldly watched as Ancestor Yu Ji and the others discussed how to kill him and how to conquer the Lost Land. He also slowly approached the core of the Wuming Mountain Range with the Immortal Alliance's disciples. As for the Thunderbolt Immortal, Taoist Witch, and the others, they took the seeds and millet seeds prepared by the Fortune Gate disciples and used the space escape technique to travel to various parts of the Yilin mainland. The heavenly beings even took the Kunlun mirror and led many Fortune Gate disciples to distribute the seeds. In just a few months, Taoist Master Zhao's reputation had spread like wildfire in the Dawn Rain mainland. Only the Heaven Alliance and the Tao Alliance were not able to reconcile immediately. After all, the Tao Alliance had Old Man Gu Qiong, Taoist Ji Yen, and the Heaven Alliance had Bright Moon Householder and the Yi family's ancestor. The two super immortal alliances had other interests to deal with and had to compromise. However, after the Heaven Sacrificial Abyss was unsealed, the Heaven Alliance and the Tao Alliance's cultivators began to interact with each other. The hostility that had been frozen for many years finally began to thaw. Xiaohua's name naturally replaced Zhang Xiaohua's name under Old Man Gu Qiong and Bright Moon Householder's intentions. Of course, Old Man Gu Qiong and Bright Moon Householder obeyed Xiaohua's instructions and did not dare to say much about his origins and whereabouts. They only said that Taoist Master Xiao was a senior from the Yilin mainland who had traveled the world in his early years. Now that he had returned, he was moved by his benevolence and had passed on a modified cultivation technique. In order to reassure the Yilin mainland's cultivators, Xiaohua had gradually become the spokesperson of the Tao Ancestor and the Tao Venerate under the two Immortal Alliance's influence. The cultivation technique was also bestowed by the Tao Ancestor and the Tao Venerate. The Thunderbolt Immortal and the others had traveled the Yilin mainland and naturally heard these rumors. They also guessed the thoughts of the two Immortal Alliance's leaders and laughed it off. After all, Xiaohua needed the power of faith. Moreover, the Tao Ancestor and the Tao Venerate had indeed bestowed Tao seeds. With these two Tao seeds, Xiaohua could complete the modification of the nascent soul cultivation technique and the nascent soul cultivation technique in a short period of time. Therefore, these rumors on the Yilin mainland could be considered to be true. Xiaohua and his doppelgangers were in full swing to save the world. The Yilin mainland's Immortal Alliance also approached the Wuming mountain range in an orderly manner. After leaving the Changchang Plains, they began to enter the depths of the Wuming mountain range. The mountain peaks were getting higher and higher, and the abyss would appear from time to time. Many swamps, deep ponds, and miasma filled the area. However, these were nothing in Du Peng's eyes because the Yilin mainland's Immortal Alliance had already left disciples in the mountain range. Every time they arrived at a new place, Du Peng would release a special messaging talisman. Before long, the disciples of the Yilin mainland's Immortal Alliance would come out to meet him and lead the 50,000 cultivators into the depths of the mountain range. Of course, there would always be accidents. Sometimes, after the messaging talisman was released, no disciples came over. Du Peng had no choice but to brace himself and barge in. There were also times when powerful soul beasts would appear in originally safe places, and the strength of these soul beasts would far surpass the divine incarnation level. And sometimes, an indescribable astronomical phenomenon would appear, and the Wuming mountain range would have a natural disaster that even Du Peng couldn't avoid. Therefore, seeing the gloomy sky getting closer and closer, the Yilin mainland's Immortal Alliance disciples and several thousand nascent soul cultivators also lost 30% of their numbers. However, as the saying goes, good people don't live long, but evil people live for 100 years. Those few people who would send voice transmissions to Xiaohua's ears from time to time, saying some dirty things, such as Ancestor Yu Ji, Master Du Shi, Shi Qing, and Huang Chufan, didn't lose a single one. They were all alive and kicking. At this time, Xiaohua already didn't have the time to care about these little flies, because after passing through the Changchang Plains, the entire Wuming mountain range began to give birth to a kind of heavy pressure. Like the dark clouds before a rainstorm, it accumulated bit by bit and slowly pressed down on Xiaohua's heart, entangling Xiaohua's Naiwen Palace and entangling Xiaohua's quasi-ninth tribulation scattered nascent soul. As Xiaohua's body moved forward, his supernatural powers were slowly confined. Xiaohua was like this, and so were his doppelgangers. Not only did they activate the space escape technique, but even the position of space gradually became blurred. In the end, except for Taoist which, the other doppelgangers simply hid in Xiaohua's body and didn't come out again. Compared to Xiaohua, Taoist which was much better. He was born as a witch and cultivated a witch body, so the influence of the Wuming mountain range's innate restriction was much smaller. When they were about to reach the core of the Wuming mountain range, Taoist which stopped and went back into Xiaohua's body. Even Taoist which found it difficult to move, so Xiaohua didn't dare to be careless. He took out the Kunlun mirror, sword gourd, and other items from the space and put them in his arms, in case of emergency. After placing the magic treasure, Xiaohua thought for a moment and waved his hand again. A thumb-sized translucent ring fell into his hand. It was a crystal skull. As soon as the crystal skull appeared in the Wuming mountain range, a layer of mist immediately appeared on the crystal skull. The mist gradually filled the skull, and the illusion of the untainted land and the blood sea and the dried bones alternated between the untainted land and the blood sea. This crystal skull ring was given to Xiaohua by Elder Jianji of the Hudu Stockade after he returned from Wushan Ridge in the depths of the Million Meng Mountains. He said that it was the Witch King's Witch King token, and he invited Xiaohua to visit Wushan Ridge when he was free. He said that there would be things that Xiaohua couldn't imagine. Now that Xiaohua was going to pass through the Heaven and Earth Restriction Formation, he would be on the other side of the Million Meng Mountains. If there were no accidents, he would be in the depths of the Wuming mountain range, and most likely Wushan Ridge. Therefore, Xiaohua took out the crystal skull ring and wore it on his right finger. On this day, less than 30,000 cultivators regrouped and flew to a place filled with dark brown sand. Then they stopped. Du Peng carefully took out a fist-sized magical item. The magical item was shaped like a toad, and it was still being activated by his magic power. The toad turned into a dark green shadow and rushed into the ground, disappearing from sight. Du Peng ordered through the token, "Everyone, let's take a rest." Thus, Xiaohua and the others descended and found a place to rest. Damn it, we've been flying for so long, but we still haven't reached the teleportation tunnel, and we haven't even seen a trace of the lost land. As soon as Patriarch Yuji landed, she immediately took out a jade bottle from her bosom and threw a pill into her mouth. While refining the pill, she cursed under her breath. "If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have come here." That's right. Venomous monk Du Shi looked around, his eyes filled with resentment. What kind of place is this? Not only is the heaven and earth energy thin, I can't even use my storage ring. My nascent soul is now trapped in my dantian, and I can't move it at all. If a soul beast appears, how am I supposed to deal with it? Xiaohua put on an act and took out a pill and threw it into his mouth. He squinted his eyes and looked around. Although it was afternoon, the sun wasn't hanging above their heads. Layers upon layers of indescribable gloominess covered the sky, thicker than the dark clouds. Within that gloominess, there seemed to be layers upon layers of mountains, and also seemed to be surging waves. In the surroundings where Xiaohua and the others were standing, the air was also suffused with a kind of stifling pressure. Others might not be able to see it, but Xiaohua could see it clearly. Waves of cryptic fluctuations that were similar to that of a magic array were floating down, filling up the space and blocking the void. Not to mention the teleportation of a supreme cultivator, even Xiaohua's spatial escape technique was unable to tear apart this flying silk. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support it, cast a monthly vote, cast a recommendation vote, collect a collection, gift, and thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 5022. What made Xiaohua feel somewhat gratified was that although he had yet to reach a higher level of mastery in his light escape technique, as he flew, he could still see patches of brilliance like clouds in the sky. It was just that these clouds were much thinner than the clouds outside the Wuming mountain range. This might not be enough to hide Xiaohua's figure, but it was enough to show that the light escape technique had a unique use under the restrictions of this world. The fluctuations here are indeed different from the 3 great forbidden arrays that this Xiao passed through all those years ago. As Xiaohua looked at the fluctuations that were everywhere in the surroundings, he pondered to himself. Looks like it's a different type of forbidden array from that immortal array. However, these fluctuations contain the power of mountains, soul power, and netherworld power. It's really similar to a soul formation. The problem is, since this is the Wuming mountain range, which is also the origin of soul cultivators, why would an almighty sorcerer separate the Wuming mountain range from the millions of Meng mountains? Could it be that the separation of soul cultivators wasn't caused by someone, but by the power of heaven and earth? Also, these innate fluctuations seem to vary from person to person. If the confinement force I'm suffering right now were to fall on those gold core cultivators of the Defeat You Immortal Union, wouldn't they have been crushed to death? Oh, also, when nearly 30,000 cultivators were moving together, the pressure of heaven and earth seemed to have decreased a lot. Now that everyone is resting, I actually feel as if there is a huge mountain pressing down on me from the sky. I can't even move. No wonder people as strong as Long Shensi and Bright Moon Householder didn't dare to take risks in the Wuming Mountain Range. No wonder Du Peng wants to organize 50,000 cultivators to break through the Wuming Mountain Range. While Xiaohua was thinking, a voice rang in his ears. "Hey brat, come here for a moment." Xiaohua was stunned. He stopped thinking and turned around to look at the source of the voice. Wasn't it Huang Chufan who was looking at him with his bell-sized eyes? Along the way, although Huang Chufan did not transmit his voice, every time he mentioned something Ancestor Jade Fat, Venomous Master Poison Stone, and Shi would clearly explain it to him. It was as if Huang Chufan was the leader of this group. Xiaohua didn't know what evil deeds Huang Chufan had done, but he heard Huang Chufan's voice transmission and the order he issued. Xiaohua also knew that this guy wasn't a good person. Therefore, Xiaohua only glanced at Huang Chufan indifferently. He didn't have any intention of moving, as if he didn't hear anything. Damn it! Huang Chufan was furious. He looked at the unremarkable cultivator who had ignored everyone along the way and didn't even say a word. He scolded, "I just asked for a medicinal pill from you. How dare you treat me like this?" Huang Chufan's words had actually given Xiaohua a way out. If it were any other place in the Wuming Mountain Range, Huang Chufan would have already killed him. Why would he need to state his purpose of speaking? Unfortunately, how could Xiaohua give him this face? Xiaohua still acted as if he didn't hear him. This time, he didn't even bother to look at him. "Boo!" Huang Chufan immediately stood up and was about to fly towards Xiaohua. The group leader named Yu Shuichong already had an impression of these people's characters and temperaments. At this moment, he hastily flew up and said with a smile, "Senior Huang, Senior Xiao might be tired. Junior has some medicinal pills here. Senior, please give me some face." As he spoke, Shuichong took out a jade bottle from his bosom and handed it over with a smile on his face. "Get lost." Huang Chufan was obviously angry. With a low roar, he waved his right hand and a strange force suddenly appeared and hit Shuichong's chest. Shuichong didn't expect that Huang Chufan would make a move just like that. Moreover, in a place where his nascent soul was imprisoned, he was still able to use a secret technique. He was careless and was hit by the force. His body rolled and fell into the sand on the ground. Shuichong didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly picked up the token and prepared to send a message. But at this moment, his eyes fell on the sand beside him. He saw that the sand was slightly trembling and rotating, rolling towards a depression, as if the earth was silently shaking. Shuichong seemed to think of something. His face was filled with fear. Black chi immediately surged around his body. He no longer concealed his devil cultivation. He turned into a bloody shadow and rushed into the sky, shouting, "Mirage, it's the mirage of the sorcerer." Shuichong was so shocked that he forgot to activate the token, but his devil chi was particularly conspicuous in the eyes of everyone. Although Shuichong was very far away from Du Peng saw it at a glance. His face changed drastically, and he cursed angrily and was about to fly over. However, when Du Peng heard Shuichong shout, "Shaman God's Mirage," his expression changed drastically. He couldn't be bothered to punish and berate Shuichong. Instead, he shook the token in his hand. He didn't care whether the token had been activated or not as he shouted loudly, "Disciples, quickly leave this place." After that, Du Peng hurriedly flew away into the distance. Moreover, just as Du Peng flew away, he hurriedly sent a voice transmission to the sky, "Senior, help. Senior, help." Obviously, Du Peng knew this mirage very well and knew that he was no match for it. Shuichong's panic and Du Peng's panic were all seen in the eyes of the disciples. The disciples of the Defeat Valley Immortal Union flew up from their resting place and shouted to the surroundings. When Shuichong was sent flying by Huang Chufan, Xiaohua was quietly standing on top of a rock. He looked at Huang Chufan, who was angrily flying towards him, as if he was scared silly. Shuichong shouted and rushed into the sky to escape. Huang Chufan had already raised his fist, and the stone pillar-like arm broke through the air, making a boom 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 sound. Xiaohua didn't doubt that if he was an ordinary nascent soul cultivator, and his nascent soul was now imprisoned by the restriction of the Wuming Mountain Range, this punch would definitely smash his head. You brought this upon yourself, you can't live. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and looked at the fist coming towards him. He didn't have any intention of dodging and only said coldly, "Mirage." Shui Chang's exclamation came into Huang Chufan's ears at this time. Huang Chufan obviously didn't know what mirage was. His expression was only slightly stunned, and even the fist that was smashing towards Xiao Hua's head didn't stop. However, just when Huang Chufan had an evil grin on his face and saw that his fist was about to land on Xiao Hua's head, and that seemingly unyielding iron bone was about to be smashed by him, a strange gust of wind suddenly emerged from the ground below Huang Chufan. The gravel that was still spiraling and trembling a moment ago suddenly soared into the sky. A yellow-brown shadow that was at least several hundred zhang in size rose from the ground and swept towards Xiao Hua and Huang Chufan. What made Huang Chufan feel strange was that there was no special sound where this shadow broke through the air. There were even several extremely sharp suction forces in the nearby space, and 3 to 5 gusts of wind blew towards the light shadow. However, all the vigilance of a nascent soul cultivator was born in Huang Chufan's heart at this time. He clearly knew that the light shadow was the so-called mirage. Moreover, if he insisted on killing Xiao Hua, he would also be injured under the mirage's light shadow. Therefore, Huang Chufan didn't hesitate anymore. He didn't care about killing Xiao Hua and hurriedly urged his body to follow the direction of the light shadow's attack and rush towards the sky. However, what made Huang Chufan surprised was that Xiao Hua, who was also enveloped by the mirage's light shadow, still had a faintly discernible sneer on his face, and his body didn't move at all. Is this guy really stupid? Huang Chufan didn't understand, but in just a moment, Huang Chufan knew who the real fool was. Because just as he flew out a few dozen feet, the huge light shadow that was born from the ground suddenly disappeared, and above his head, a tentacle that was only a few dozen feet long suddenly appeared out of thin air. This tentacle was full of sharp spikes that were several feet long, and between the spikes, there were several vortex-like black holes. The sharp sound of wind and the suction force were emitted from these black holes, and just as Huang Chufan's gaze swept past, a strange light shadow flashed from the edge of the black holes. That light shadow was like a dozen huge tentacles that emerged from the space near Huang Chufan and fell towards Huang Chufan and Xiao Hua. Damn it! Huang Chufan immediately understood that the previous light shadow on the ground was an illusion, and the tentacles that fell from the sky were the real killer. Huang Chufan rushed up with all his strength, and the tentacles of the mirage fell with all their strength. In particular, the tentacles of the mirage streaked across the air at an extremely fast speed, and there wasn't much sound. When Huang Chufan came to his senses, the sharp tentacles had already approached, and the biting cold had already been transmitted from the spikes of the tentacles, causing Huang Chufan's whole body to be covered in a layer of cold sweat in this scorching afternoon. His nascent soul was imprisoned, and he couldn't use teleportation, and the amount of true essence that could be activated was also very little. Huang Chufan steeled his heart, and the muscles in his arms twitched with a pew-pew sound. A force that was fiercer than the one that attacked Xiao Hua just now was generated from Huang Chufan's arms, and his arms instantly became a little thicker. Huang Chufan raised his arms as if he was raising fire to burn the sky, and wanted to rely on the 8-9 mysteries that he secretly cultivated to avoid this disaster. Pooh! The tentacles of the mirage fell, and Huang Chufan's 8-9 mysteries golden body that he painstakingly cultivated was like paper. The spikes easily pierced Huang Chufan's arms, and the tentacles streaked past, breaking the bones and flesh of Huang Chufan's arms. Huang Chufan screamed in pain, and his body actually wanted to fly backward with the help of the force. However, before he could fly, the vortex-like black hole above the tentacles poked out with a woo. A skull that looked like a skeleton stretched out. The skull passed through the flying flesh and blood like lightning and fell on the top of Huang Chufan's head. Pooh! There was another muffled sound. The small head of the mirage smashed Huang Chufan's head and went straight into his body. The look of disbelief in Huang Chufan's eyes disappeared like a lamp being extinguished, and his body fell into the air. However, things didn't go as planned. Just as Huang Chufan's body fell, the small head above the tentacles of the mirage retracted from the top of Huang Chufan's head. On the small skull-like head, a nascent soul with tightly closed eyes was held in the skull's mouth. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, and reward it. Thank you for all kinds of support.